The first night, Julian threw a stack of bills at Mariana and told her that was the only warmth she would receive from him in bed, leaving her crying in her wedding dress. He never imagined that this trembling woman would become his undoing, and that he would end up begging on his knees for a single kiss from her despised lips. It was the beginning of a passionate war, where hatred transformed into a dark and wild desire within the ranch. What Julian did that morning would mark his destiny forever and awaken a beast full of jealousy and uncontrollable rage. No one in town would forget the screams that came from the bedroom that stormy and cruel night. Before we begin, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment right now down below from where you are watching. Your support helps us tell more powerful stories. May your life be full of blessings if you subscribe to the button below that says subscribe. Now, let's begin. The sound of thunder shook the windows of the enormous mansion at Oak Ridge Ranch just as Julian slammed the door of the bridal suite, making Mariana jump in fright, still wearing her immaculate wedding dress, a dress that now weighed on her like iron armor. Her hands trembled as she held the bouquet of white flowers that were already beginning to wither. Just like her illusions, she looked at him with those large honey-colored eyes, waiting for a kind word, a welcoming gesture. Anything that would indicate to her that her marriage was not the monumental mistake her heart was screaming it was. But Julian, tall, imposing, with his broad shoulders tense under his black suit and his jaw clenched, did not look at her with love, not even with affection. He looked at her like someone looks at a bad business deal, with annoyance and disdain. He loosened his tie with a sharp gesture and poured himself a glass of tequila without offering her anything. Mariana tried to speak, her voice coming out barely as a broken whisper. "Julian, what's wrong? You haven't even spoken to me the whole way from the church. I know this was quick, that our parents arranged it to join the lands, but I am your wife. We are going to share a life together. Please don't treat me like this." Julian turned slowly, his dark eyes shining with a contained fury that chilled the young woman's blood. He set the glass on the solid wood table with a sharp thud that resonated in the tense silence of the room. "My wife?" He let out a bitter and cruel laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Make no mistake, little girl, you are not my wife. You are the payment of a debt. You are the guarantee that my family's lands keep producing. You married my last name, not me. So don't expect me to play the husband in love within these four walls, because that is never going to happen. Look at yourself. You're a scared girl who knows nothing about life or pleasing a man. You provoke nothing in me. Absolutely nothing." Mariana felt tears burn her eyes, but she bit her lip until it almost bled so as not to cry in front of him. Wounded pride hurt more than rejection. She was no silly girl. She had worked hard all her life helping her father and knew what she was worth, even if he was blind. She took a deep breath, lifted her chin, and took a step toward him, confronting him. "Perhaps I was bought like a cow for your cattle, Julian, but I have blood in my veins and a heart in my chest. If I don't provoke anything in you, why don't you let me go? Why did you accept the deal if I disgust you so much? Maybe the one who is afraid of not measuring up as a man is you." Julian stood paralyzed for a second, surprised by the audacity of this woman who seemed so fragile minutes before. Anger rose up his neck. He shortened the distance between them in 2 long strides and grabbed her arm firmly, not to hurt her, but to dominate her. He pulled her toward his hard, hot body, their faces staying mere inches apart. Mariana could smell the scent of tequila, wood, and his masculine perfume, which, despite everything, she found intoxicating. "You think I don't measure up?" he whispered in a husky voice near her ear, making her shudder. Be careful with what you say, Mariana, because I could show you right here, on this rug, what I am capable of. But I won't. I won't give you the pleasure of thinking you have power over me. Tonight you will sleep on the sofa, and tomorrow you will start working in the house as is fitting. No one lives here for free. He released her suddenly, as if her skin burned, and Mariana stumbled back, hitting the edge of the bed. Julian took off his jacket and shirt in front of her without any shame, letting her see his strong torso. Worked by years of horse riding and field work, she couldn't help but look, feeling a mixture of fear and a sudden, treacherous attraction that infuriated her even more. He noticed her gaze and smiled arrogantly. Like what you see? Too bad, because this is only for real women, not for daddy's girls. He threw himself on the bed, turned off the light, and turned his back on her, leaving Mariana standing in the dark, with a broken heart and a fury being born in her gut. That night, Mariana did not sleep on the sofa. She sat in the armchair watching the rain fall, swearing to herself that this man would swallow his words, that she would make him desire her so much it would hurt. And when that happened, she would be the one in control. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the large windows, but the atmosphere in the ranch kitchen was colder than a freezer. Mariana had come down early, no longer wearing the wedding dress, but a simple blue cotton dress that discreetly but effectively enhanced her curves. Her long black hair fell in a cascade over her back. She had decided not to hide. The maids murmured when she entered. They knew the boss was in a foul mood. Julian was sitting at the head of the long table, drinking black coffee and reviewing some papers. He didn't even look up when she sat down. "Good morning," Mariana said with a firm voice. Julian kept reading, ignoring her completely as if she were a ghost. She felt her blood boil. She grabbed the coffee pot and poured herself coffee, intentionally clinking the cup against the saucer. "I said good morning, Julian. At my house I was taught manners. Or has the great boss of Oak Ridge Ranch lost his manners along with his decency?" Julian slowly lowered the papers, his eyes pinning her, and for a moment, Mariana saw a flash of surprise, maybe even interest, before the mask of coldness fell again. "In this house, one speaks when the husband allows it, Mariana. And stop making noise, my head hurts. And by the way, today my mother is coming for lunch. I hope you don't embarrass me. She wanted me to marry Claudia, the mayor's daughter, a woman of the world, elegant. Not you. So try not to break anything and keep your mouth shut." Mariana squeezed the cup so hard, her knuckles turned white. "Claudia? Oh, that woman who walks through town showing off fur coats in the middle of summer? Of course, I'm sure you'd make a perfect couple, both empty and superficial. But I have news for you, dear husband. You married me, and if your mother comes, I will receive her as the lady of this house that I am, whether you like it or not." Julian rose from the chair abruptly, making it screech against the floor. He leaned over the table, invading her personal space again. "You aren't the lady of anything until I say so. And watch that little mouth, because I'm getting the urge to shut it for you." "Oh yeah?" Mariana challenged, rising as well to stand face to face, though he was a head taller. She felt the electricity crackle between them, a sexual tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. "And how do you plan to do that? By force? Because that's the only thing you know how to use." Julian stared at her lips, full and red with anger. He had a wild impulse to kiss her, to devour her mouth, to silence her, and taste that fire he didn't know she had. His hand moved on its own, caressing the edge of the table, imagining it was her waist. "Don't tempt me, Mariana," he growled. his voice lower and more dangerous. "Because I am a man who takes what he wants, and if I keep hearing your insults, I'm going to forget I promised not to touch you, and I'm going to teach you who's boss here, on the table if necessary." Mariana felt a heat rise up her legs at the image he had just planted in her mind. She blushed violently, which made Julian smile with triumph. He moved closer, almost touching his nose to hers. "Did you turn red? What did you imagine, little saint? Are you imagining your husband making you his right here, throwing the plates to the floor? You are more perverse than you look." Before she could respond or slap him, he turned around and walked out of the kitchen with that firm and arrogant stride, leaving her with her heart racing at 1,000 miles an hour and her legs trembling. Mariana had to sit down, fanning herself with her hand. "Damn him," she thought. "Damn him, and damn my body for reacting like this." The visit from Julian's mother, Mrs. Bernarda, was exactly the nightmare Mariana expected. The woman arrived at noon, dressed in rigorous black, as if she were in mourning for her son's bachelorhood, with a critical gaze that scanned the house looking for dust, and then scanned Mariana, looking for defects. They sat down to eat in the main dining room, a gloomy atmosphere. Julian presided over the table, Bernarda to his right and Mariana to his left. The silence was uncomfortable, broken only by the sound of silverware. "The soup is cold," declared Mrs. Bernarda, dropping the spoon with disgust. "Typical of when there isn't a firm hand in the kitchen. Julian, son, I told you that you should hire trained staff, not leave these things in the hands of beginners." Mariana swallowed hard, counting to 10. "The soup is perfect, Mrs. Bernarda. Perhaps it is your palate that is accustomed to more bitter things," Mariana said, with a sweet but fake smile. Julian choked on his wine and coughed to hide a laugh. Bernarda's eyes widened excessively. "What insolence! Julian, do you allow this girl to speak to me like that? Claudia would never have been so rude." "Mother, please," Julian intervened, though in his tone there was no defense for Mariana, only exhaustion. "Don't start. Mariana, apologize." Mariana looked at her husband, hoping that for once, just once, he would take her side. But she saw the indifference on his face. That hurt her more than her mother-in-law's insults. "I will not apologize for telling the truth. Excuse me, I've lost my appetite." Mariana stood up with dignity and went out to the garden, holding back the urge to cry until she was far from them. She walked toward the stables, seeking comfort from the animals. She had always liked horses. There, stroking the muzzle of a beautiful black stallion, she heard an unknown and kind voice behind her. "That's Gypsy, the most difficult horse on the ranch. Be careful, ma'am. He usually bites those he doesn't know." Mariana turned and met kind green eyes and a warm smile. It was a young man, perhaps Julian's age, but with a much gentler air. He wore work clothes, but seemed educated. "Hello, he hasn't bitten me. It seems he likes me," she replied, discreetly wiping a tear. "I'm Robert, the local vet and a friend of the family. Well, more like a friend to the horses. You must be Mariana, Julian's wife. The whole town talks about your beauty, but they fell short." The compliment was soft, without malice, and it fell on Mariana like a balm on her wounded self-esteem. She smiled sincerely for the first time in days. "Thank you, Robert. I'm Mariana, yes. Though I don't know if wife is the correct term. I'm more like a piece of decorative furniture here." Robert laughed and moved a bit closer. "Well, you're the prettiest piece of furniture I've ever seen. Julian is a fool if he doesn't see it, but he's always been that way, blind to what's right in front of him. Hey, if you need anything at all, or just someone to talk to who isn't a horse, I'm here. I live on the adjacent estate." Mariana felt immense relief at having an ally. "Thank you, Robert. I truly appreciate it." At that moment, Robert extended his hand to shake hers, and Mariana accepted the gesture. He held her hand a second longer than necessary, gently stroking her knuckles with his thumb. It was an innocent gesture, but loaded with human warmth. What neither of them saw was Julian, watching them from the second-floor balcony with a glass of whiskey in his hand. His eyes narrowed as he saw how that man touched his wife. He felt a pang in his stomach that he couldn't identify. Was it jealousy? Impossible, he told himself. I don't care about that woman. But the way he squeezed the glass until it almost burst said otherwise. Seeing Mariana smile at another man with that sweetness, she denied him set his blood on fire. He descended the stairs 2 at a time, driven by an irrational rage, and walked quickly out to the garden. "Mariana!" he shouted, his voice echoing like thunder, making Robert release her hand and take a step back. "Julian, hello. I was just greeting your wife," Robert said calmly. Julian ignored the vet and planted himself in front of Mariana, grabbing her by the waist possessively, pulling her against his body in front of the other man, a primitive gesture of territorial property marking. "What are you doing out here flirting with the staff when you have guests inside? My mother is waiting for you for dessert." Mariana felt suffocated by his proximity and the blatant lie. "I wasn't flirting, and your mother despises me. Besides, you're hurting me. Let me go." "I'm not letting you go," he whispered, lowering his head toward her ear so only she could hear, while with one hand he squeezed her waist, and with the other he possessively stroked her arm, looking defiantly at Robert. "Robert, thanks for coming, but my wife and I have urgent business in our room. You know, newlyweds things." Robert understood the message, looked at Mariana with pity, nodded, and left. When they were alone, Mariana pushed Julian with all her strength. "What is wrong with you? How embarrassing! Why did you tell him that? We have no business in the room." Julian cornered her against the wooden wall of the stable. His breathing was heavy. His black eyes scanned her body with a hunger he could no longer hide under his facade of indifference. "Oh no! Do you prefer to stay out here smiling at the vet? Do you like being looked at, Mariana? Do you need attention? Because if it's attention you want, I can give it to you." "You're a brute," she shouted, hitting his chest with her fists. "You treat me like trash, and then you get jealous because someone treats me like a person. You're crazy, Julian." He caught her wrists with one hand and pinned them above her head, pressing his body completely against hers. Mariana could feel every one of his hard muscles. She could feel his desire, evident and firm against her belly. She stood paralyzed, her breath catching. "It's not jealousy," he said, breathing over her lips, barely brushing them. "It's that I can't stand others touching what is mine. And even if I don't love you, Mariana, you are mine. You wear my ring, you carry my last name, and you live under my roof. I am yours by a piece of paper, not by my will," she whispered defiantly, though her legs trembled and a strange electric current ran down her spine. Her lips parted involuntarily, asking for the kiss he denied her. "Let's see how long that will last," Julian said. And then he kissed her. It was a wild, hungry kiss, punishing at first, crushing his mouth against hers, forcing her to open. Mariana tried to resist for a second, but the taste of him, the brute force with which he desired her, broke her defenses. She moaned into his mouth, and her hands, freed for a moment, clung to his hair, pulling him closer. Tongues fought, tangling in a wet and hot dance that left them both breathless. Julian lowered his hands to her hips, kneading her flesh with desperation. He lifted her off the ground against the wall. Mariana wrapped her legs around his waist, feeling the scorching heat in her core. He bit her lower lip and moved down to kiss her neck, sucking the sensitive skin, making her arch her back and let out a stifled cry. "Tell me you are mine," he growled against her throat. "Julian," she moaned, lost in the passion. But just as his hand began to move up under her dress, seeking the warmth of her thighs, the sound of the front doorbell and the shrill voice of Mrs. Bernarda calling for Julian broke them apart. Julian stopped dead, as if a bucket of ice water had been thrown over him. He released her abruptly, letting her slide to the floor. He was breathing heavily, looking at her with a mixture of desire and horror for having lost control that way. He ran his hand through his hair. Frustrated. "Fix yourself. Your dress is wrinkled and your lips are swollen. Don't go in like that," he said with a husky and cold voice, putting his mask back on, though his eyes said something else. He turned around and left, leaving her there, trembling, hot, unsatisfied, and more confused than ever. The following days were a slow torture, a dance of attraction and repulsion. They lived under the same roof, but seemed like enemies in a silent war. At night, Julian locked himself in his office to drink, listening to Mariana's footsteps on the floor above, imagining her in that large, empty bed. He cursed himself for wanting to go up, for wanting to finish what they started in the stable, but his pride was stronger. His father had taught him that loving a woman was giving her the power to destroy you, and he was not going to be destroyed. Mariana, for her part, decided she wasn't going to stay crying in corners. She began to get involved in the ranch, helping with the accounts, organizing the house, and even going down to the fields. There she often met Robert, who always had a smile and a kind word. Mariana knew she was playing with fire, but the vet's friendship was the only fresh air in her suffocating life. Moreover, she noticed how Julian's jaw tightened every time he saw her return from the field smiling, and that small revenge was sweet to her. One hot afternoon, Mariana was in the library, trying to reach a book on the highest shelf. She had stood on her tiptoes, her dress riding up a bit, stretching her body. She didn't hear Julian enter. He stayed in the doorway, observing the curve of her back, her shapely legs, the sweat glistening on her neck. He felt a pang of lust so strong it physically hurt. He entered silently and stood behind her, pressing his chest to her back. He reached out and took the book effortlessly. Mariana jumped, turning in the small space left between him and the shelf, becoming trapped. "Thank you," she whispered, her heart in her throat at seeing the darkness in his gaze. "Looking for romance novels to escape your reality?" he asked mockingly, but without moving away, placing his hands on both sides of her head on the shelves, imprisoning her. "I'm looking for accounting books. I want to understand how the ranch is managed. I've seen that you have losses in the north sector, and I think I know why," she replied bravely. Julian arched an eyebrow, impressed despite himself. "Oh, really? Now the city girl knows about agriculture." "I know how to read and add, Julian, and I know your foreman is stealing from you. But of course you're so busy being a jerk to me that you don't notice what's happening under your nose." Julian let out a short laugh. "You're a devil, Mariana. You have a very sharp tongue. I wonder what else that tongue knows how to do." His voice dropped to a deep, seductive tone, dragging out the words. He brushed his knee against her leg, a calculated and mischievous touch. "Maybe if you were less rude you would find out," she answered, playing along, tired of being the victim. "Maybe I like it when you challenge me," he admitted, bringing his face dangerously close. "Every woman always says yes to everything I say. You're a nuisance, a constant headache. Then take an aspirin and let me through. I don't want an aspirin, Julian murmured, looking at her lips with voracious desire. I want to know why you smile so much at that idiot Robert, and look at me like you want to kill me. Do you like him? Do you like that softy who smells like dog medicine? Robert is a gentleman. He treats me with respect. He listens to me, something you don't know. And yes, I like him. I like him as a friend. But you have a mind rotten by jealousy. Jealousy? Julian punched the shelf near her face, making her close her eyes. I'm not jealous, but you are my wife, and as long as you are, no other man is going to touch you, not even with a glance. I forbid you to see him. You don't forbid me anything. You aren't my owner. If you don't give me affection, I will look for it where it is given to me, even if it's just the affection of friends. Julian grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. Be careful, Mariana. Don't play with my patience, because they can lock you in this house and throw away the key. Try it, and you'll see how I burn the house down with you inside, she whispered furiously. Julian looked at her for a second in silence, evaluating her, and suddenly he smiled, a genuine smile, almost admiring. You are pure fire, woman. Too bad you're so stubborn. He moved away, freeing her, but before leaving the library, he stopped and said without looking at her, Tomorrow there's a festival in town, the patron saint festivities. Get ready. We're going. And you're going on my arm all night. And woe to you if I see Robert nearby. Wear the red dress, the tight one. I want everyone to see what is mine. The town festival was a whirlwind of music, colors, and food. Mariana was wearing the red dress Julian had demanded, and she had to admit she felt powerful. The dress clung to her body like a second skin, leaving her shoulders bare. The neckline was elegant, but suggestive. When they entered the plaza, all eyes were on them. Julian, imposing in his open white shirt and hat, held her by the waist with a firmness that was half protection, half possession. She felt the heat of his hand burning her skin through the fabric. They danced, ate, and drank. For a few hours, it seemed like they were a normal couple. Julian even smiled a couple of times, and Mariana was surprised to find herself enjoying his company. The sexual tension between them was palpable, every touch, every glance loaded with intent. When a slow song played, Julian dragged her to the center of the dance floor. He pulled her against his body so tightly that not even air could pass between them. She rested her head on his chest, listening to the strong beating of his heart. He smelled so good. She closed her eyes and let herself go, dreaming that maybe, just maybe, things could change. You dance well for being so rebellious, he whispered in her ear, lightly nibbling her earlobe. Mariana felt a delicious shiver. You don't do badly for being an ogre. Julian laughed softly, and the sound vibrated in his chest against her breasts. They were in their own world until reality hit. A stunning blonde woman with a predatory smile appeared through the crowd and placed a hand with long red nails on Julian's arm. Julian, my love, what a miracle to see you out of your cave, the woman exclaimed, completely ignoring Mariana. Julian tensed, and Mariana felt her body go rigid. He pulled away slightly, breaking the magic. Claudia, what a surprise, he said dryly. Mariana recognized her. It was the famous Claudia, her mother-in-law's perfect candidate. The woman looked at him boldly, devouring him with her eyes. I've missed you so much, darling, since you got married, she said the word mockingly. You don't visit your old friends anymore, but I see you've brought your little wife. Claudia looked Mariana up and down with absolute contempt. Nice dress, dear, though a bit vulgar for a lady of society, don't you think? Mariana felt anger rise, but before she could answer, she waited for Julian's reaction. She waited for him to defend her, to tell that viper to get lost. But Julian did nothing. He simply stayed silent, uncomfortable. "Well, Julian, you owe me a dance for old time's sake. You don't mind, right, Mariana?" Claudia said, grabbing his arm and pulling. Julian looked at Mariana, hesitating, but then looked away. "Just one. Wait here, Mariana. I'll get a drink afterward." And he went, letting himself be led to the floor by Claudia, leaving her alone in the middle of the crowd. Mariana felt as if she had been slapped across the face. The pain was sharp and deep. "He doesn't care about me," she thought. "I'm just a trophy to him." But Claudia, he either cares about her or is afraid of her. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to cry in public. She turned to leave, wanting to flee from there, but bumped into a solid chest. She looked up and saw Robert, who was looking at her with concern. "Are you okay? I saw what happened. He's an idiot." Mariana nodded, unable to speak. "Get me out of here, Robert. Please, get me out of here, now." Robert didn't hesitate. He offered his arm, and she took it. They left the party together, disappearing into the night. Minutes later, when the song ended, Julian pulled away from Claudia with disgust, hating himself for not having reacted. He searched for Mariana with his gaze among the crowd, expecting to see her there, angry, waiting for him. But the spot was empty. He searched for her desperately, pushing people aside. "Where is she? Where is my wife?" he asked an acquaintance. "She left a while ago, boss. She left with the vet. They were heading very close together, toward the river." Julian's world stopped, and then exploded in red. "With Robert, toward the river." The image of Mariana in another's arms, kissing another, giving him that fire that was his, blinded him completely. He mounted his horse and galloped toward the river like a soul driven by the devil, with his heart beating 1,000 times, and only one idea in his mind. If she had betrayed him, if she had let another touch her, all hell would break loose. That night, Mariana would know who her true owner was, whatever the cost. Julian's horse burst onto the riverbank like a beast out of hell, kicking up dust and stones. He braked so sharply that the animal neighed and rose on its hind legs, silhouetting terrifyingly under the full moon. Mariana gave a stifled cry and instinctively moved away from Robert, who had only been lending her his handkerchief to dry her tears. The scene, though innocent in Julian's maddened eyes, seemed to be the confirmation of his worst nightmare. His woman, his property, given over to nighttime intimacy with another man. Julian jumped from the saddle before the animal finished settling and walked toward them with clenched fists and a locked jaw. "Get away from her if you don't want me to break your face right here," Julian roared, his deep voice echoing against the trees, sending the night birds flying. Robert stood up quickly, interposing himself between the rancher and Mariana in a gesture of protection that only served to throw more fuel on the fire of Julian's anger. "Calm down, Julian. It's not what you think. We were just talking. She was upset because of you, because of how you left her stranded at the party like she was an old rag," Robert said, trying to stay calm, though he knew the man in front of him was blind with fury. "Are you going to teach me how to treat my wife? You, a low-rate vet who thinks he's a savior?" Julian didn't wait any longer. He threw a direct punch at Robert's jaw. The sound of impact was sharp and painful. Robert fell to the ground from the surprise and force of the blow, splitting his lip. "Julian, stop!" Mariana screamed, throwing herself on her husband's arm to stop him before he could strike again. "You're crazy! We weren't doing anything. He was just listening to me, you animal. He was just listening to me. Julian turned toward her, breathing heavily, eyes bloodshot. But seeing her there, clinging to his arm, with her red dress messy and her hair loose, fury mixed with that poisonous desire that had consumed him since the wedding day. He grabbed Mariana by the waist with one arm, lifting her almost off her feet, pinning her to his hard, sweaty body. He was listening to you? And what were you saying to him? Were you telling him that your husband doesn't satisfy you? That you were looking for comfort in his good boy arms? He shouted in her face, spraying her with saliva and rage. I was telling him that my husband is a blind idiot who prefers a plastic blonde over his own wife, she replied, shouting louder, hitting his chest. Let me go. You disgust me. The word was the trigger. Julian looked at her with an intensity that silenced her. Without saying another word, he slung her over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes, ignoring her kicks and screams of protest. Put me down! Robert, help me! Mariana shrieked. Robert tried to get up, but Julian had already mounted her on his horse, jumping on behind her, imprisoning her between his steel arms and the saddle horn. Don't you dare follow us, Julian warned Robert, who was wiping blood from his mouth from the ground. If I ever see you near her again, I won't be so kind. He dug in his spurs, and the horse bolted toward the ranch. The ride was a silent and electric torture. Mariana sat in front of him, feeling Julian's chest pressed against her back, every breath he took, every movement of his thigh muscles against hers. The friction was constant, inevitable. She could feel the heat emanating from his body, and despite her fury, her treacherous body began to react. The wind lashed her face, but the heat came from behind. Julian, for his part, was fighting his demons. Having her like this, held in his arms, smelling her jasmine perfume mixed with the night, was driving him crazy. He felt her curves fitting perfectly with his. Why did you go with him? Julian whispered near her ear, no longer shouting, but with a husky and pained voice that the wind almost carried away. Because you left me alone for Claudia, she responded, trembling, and he noticed the tremor, tightening his embrace more, lowering one hand dangerously from her waist to brush her belly. I didn't leave you for her. I went to tell her to leave me alone, that I am married, but you didn't wait. You ran to his arms. You're impatient, Mariana. And you're a possessive brute. They arrived at the ranch, and Julian didn't wait for the stable hands to come out. He dismounted and pulled her down, but did not let her go. He dragged her toward the house, up the main stairs. The employees hid upon seeing the boss's face. They entered the bridal suite, and he locked the door, throwing the key on the nightstand. Mariana backed up until she hit the bed. What are you going to do? She asked, her heart beating in her throat. Julian took off his hat and tossed it away. He approached her like a predator, cornering its prey. I'm going to do what I should have done the first night. I'm going to erase the tracks of that wretch from your mind and your skin. I'm going to make you forget his name so that you only know how to scream mine. You said you wouldn't touch me, that I provoked nothing in you, she challenged him, though her legs were weak and a shameful dampness was beginning to manifest between her thighs. Julian let out a dark laugh and took off his shirt, revealing his heaving chest glistening with sweat. I lied. You provoke everything in me, Mariana. You make me want to kill you and want to worship you at the same time. You're a witch who got under my skin. Do you think I didn't see you dancing in that red dress? You looked like a fire goddess, and I am the only one who has the right to burn in you. He lunged at her, kissing her with a devouring passion. This time there was no rejection. Mariana had been holding back too much. The loneliness, the contempt, the repressed desire. Her arms went around his neck, and she returned the kiss with the same fury. They bit each other. They sought each other, clashing teeth and tongues. Julian pushed her onto the bed, falling over her, protecting his weight with his elbows, but keeping her immobilized. His large, calloused hands moved over the red dress, searching for the zipper. "Tell me you want me," he demanded between kisses on her neck, moving down toward her neckline, leaving a trail of wet fire. "Tell me, damn it!" "I hate you. I hate you so much," Mariana moaned, arching her back when he squeezed one of her breasts through the fabric. "But I want you. I want you inside me, Julian. Please, I can't take these games anymore." Those words broke Julian's last barrier of sanity. With a rough movement, he ripped the delicate fabric of the dress, exposing his wife's white and soft skin to his hungry eyes. He stopped for a second to look at her. His breath hitched. "You are beautiful," he murmured, his voice trembling for the first time. "You are perfect. Don't talk. Just love me," she whispered, pulling him down. What followed was not soft or tender. It was a battle of skin, an urgent and necessary encounter. Julian took her with force, with possession, marking his territory in every corner of her body, kissing every mole, every invisible scar. Mariana, far from being scared, responded with scratches on his back and moans that filled the empty room. "Julian!" she cried out when he finally made her his, joining their bodies in a single frenetic rhythm. He looked her in the eyes the whole time, making sure she knew who he was, interlacing his fingers with hers, forcing her to feel, to be present. "You are mine, Mariana. Mine," he growled in her ear as pleasure enveloped them like an uncontrollable tide. There were dirty words whispered in the dark, broken promises, and confessions of desire that would never yield to the light of day. That night, hatred and love fused in sweat and tangled sheets, and for the first time in months, the mansion did not feel cold. When the dawn sun began to peek through the curtains, Julian woke first. Mariana was sleeping on his chest, her black hair spread like a silk mantle over his skin. She looked so peaceful, with swollen lips and the reddish marks of his beard on her neck and shoulders. Julian felt a huge weight in his heart. He had lost control. He had fallen into the trap of his own feelings. He gently caressed her naked arm, feeling a tenderness that terrified him. "If I fall in love with her, I will be weak," he thought, remembering his father, a hard man who never showed affection. "And if she knows I desire her so much, she will manipulate me." Fear was stronger than the peace of the moment. Carefully, he pulled away from her, got up, and dressed in silence. He looked at her one last time before leaving, feeling like a coward, but convincing himself it was necessary to put distance between them again. Mariana woke up an hour later, reaching out for his warmth, but found his side of the bed cold and empty. She sat up abruptly, covering herself with the sheet, feeling the sweet ache in her body that reminded her of the wild night they had shared. "Julian?" she called softly. No one answered. She got up, put on a robe, and went downstairs with a heavy heart. She found Julian in the office, already dressed in his work clothes, cleaning a rifle. His face was a mask of stone again. "Good morning," she said from the door, expecting a smile, a kiss, something. Julian didn't even look her in the eye. "Get dressed, Mariana. We have work. Last night was a mistake." Mariana felt as if her heart had been ripped from her chest with an icy hand. "A mistake?" she repeated, her voice trembling with indignation and pain. "After everything we said to each other? After how you touched me?" Julian set the rifle on the table forcefully and looked at her. His eyes were cold, but in the depths there was a storm. The alcohol, the rage of the moment, a man's instincts, Mariana. Don't confuse sex with love. You are still my wife by contract, and I have a ranch to run. Don't expect me to start reciting poems to you now. Forget what happened. Mariana clenched her fists. Tears of humiliation burned her eyes, but she swallowed them. The pain instantly transformed into a shell of ice. "Fine, Julian, if that's what you want," she said, with a voice so cold it made him blink. "It was just sex. You're right. I also needed to be satisfied. And you, well, you served the purpose. Don't worry. I won't mistake you for a man capable of loving again." She turned around and walked out with her head held high, though inside she was devastated. Julian watched her leave and had to grip the desk so as not to run after her and beg for forgiveness on his knees. "What have I done?" he asked himself. But the pride of the Oaktons was a curse difficult to break. The following days were strange. There was a sexual tension so thick you could breathe it, but also a wall of silence. Mariana worked twice as hard not to think, and avoided Robert to avoid causing problems, although the vet kept sending notes asking how she was, notes she burned without reading. However, fate had prepared a move that would force them together. One afternoon, a week later, the foreman, a loyal man named Ansel, came running into the main house. "Boss, boss!" he shouted desperately. Julian and Mariana came out at the same time from different rooms. "What's wrong, Ansel?" Julian asked, alarmed. "It's the South Sector barn. It's on fire, boss. And they say they saw people running toward the hills. It was intentional. But the worst isn't that." "What's the worst?" Mariana shouted, feeling a bad premonition. "Your favorite horse, Bolt, and the pregnant mare are locked in there. The door got jammed by the fire." Without thinking twice, Julian ran toward the truck. Mariana didn't hesitate for a second and jumped into the passenger seat. "You stay," he ordered her, starting the engine. "Not a chance. It's my ranch too. Drive or I'll drive." Julian looked at her, saw the steel determination in her honey eyes, and nodded, flooring the gas. When they arrived, the scene was hellish. Flames licked the old wooden roof of the barn, black smoke obscured the sun, and the screams of the trapped horses were heartbreaking. The ranch hands were running with buckets of water, useless against such an inferno. "Bring the hose from the river pump," Julian shouted, jumping out of the truck. But the pump was far away. Julian soaked a blanket in a nearby trough and threw it over himself. "I'm going in," he said decisively. "No! You're crazy! You'll kill yourself!" Mariana shouted, grabbing his arm. "The roof is going to collapse." "They're my animals, Mariana. They're my life." He broke free from her and ran into the flames. Mariana watched as he disappeared into the black smoke and orange fire. Minutes passed, and he didn't come out. "Julian!" she screamed, feeling her life slipping away. No one was doing anything, paralyzed by fear. Mariana saw another bucket of water, soaked her own dress, tore her skirt so she could run, and grabbed an iron bar from the ground. "Ma'am, don't go in!" Ansel tried to stop her. "If he doesn't come out, neither do I," she shouted with a lioness's fury. Mariana went into the inferno. The heat was unbearable. The smoke burned her throat and eyes. She heard heavy coughing. She moved blindly. "Julian!" She found him trying to open the latch of the mare's box, which was red hot. Julian was on his knees, coughing, almost fainted from the smoke, with an ugly burn on his arm. "Mariana, go!" he managed to say. "Shut up and help me!" Mariana jammed the iron bar into the latch and used all her body weight to pry it, while the beams above began to fall, throwing deadly sparks. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3! With a metallic creak and a superhuman cry of effort from Mariana, the door gave way. The mare bolted toward freedom, followed by Bolt. Julian tried to stand up but stumbled. Mariana didn't hesitate. She slung his arm over her shoulder and, drawing strength from where she had none, bore much of his weight. "Come on! You're not going to die here, you stubborn fool!" she shouted as they walked through the fire. Just as they crossed the exit and fell onto the fresh grass, the barn structure collapsed behind them with a brutal roar. Julian and Mariana were lying on the ground, black with soot, coughing and gasping, but alive. The hands ran to help them. "Water! Bring water and the doctor!" Ansel shouted. Mariana sat up a bit and looked at Julian. His face was burned by the sun and the fire, but his eyes were fixed on her. He looked at her as if he had never seen her before. He had seen her courage, her strength, her suicidal loyalty. That woman, the city girl he despised, had just saved his life by risking her own. Julian stretched out his trembling hand and touched her ash-stained cheek. "You're crazy," he whispered in a husky and pained voice. But this time there was no mockery. There was pure admiration. "I learned from the best," she responded, trying to smile, though her whole body hurt. At that moment, a black limousine, immaculate and shiny, stopped near the commotion. Claudia stepped out, dressed to the nines, followed by a sinister-looking man with a briefcase. Claudia looked at the fire with indifference, and then walked toward where Julian and Mariana were lying on the ground, with a grimace of disgust at seeing them so dirty. "Well, well," Claudia said, slowly applauding. "What a rustic spectacle. Julian, honey, look at the state you're in. I came to bring you an offer for your lands, now that I see you can't even take care of a barn without it burning down. My father says it's time for you to sell before you ruin yourself completely with this incompetent administration." Mariana felt a renewed fury. She stood up, staggering. She looked like an Amazon warrior out of battle, with her dress torn and her skin stained, but radiating a dignity that Claudia would never have. "Get out of here, Claudia," Mariana said, and her voice sounded so authoritative that even the ranch hands lowered their heads. "This is Oak Ridge land, and as long as I breathe and stand beside my husband, not 1 square yard is sold to vultures like you. And be careful, because the fire isn't out yet. You wouldn't want a spark to burn those cheap hair extensions." Julian, still on the ground being tended to by Ansel, watched his wife face his old lover and defend his heritage with tooth and nail. Something broke inside him definitively. The wall of ice around his heart cracked. That woman was worth more than 1,000 ranches. But the man with the briefcase stepped forward. "Madam, I fear it's not that simple. We have promissory notes signed by Mr. Julian's father. If you don't pay an exorbitant sum in 3 days, the bank, which is now a partner of Miss Claudia's father, will execute the foreclosure. This fire, well, let's just say it lowers the value of the property. It's in your interest to sell today." Mariana looked at Julian. He was pale, not from the burns, but from shame. He had hidden from her that they were bankrupt. "Is it true?" she asked him with a look. Julian lowered his head. 3 days, Julian." Claudia smiled cruelly. "Tick-tock." Claudia turned around and left, leaving a trail of expensive perfume amidst the smell of burnt wood. Mariana knelt again beside Julian, who expected a reproach, an insult, for her to say, "I told you so." But Mariana, on impulse, took his face with both hands and kissed him on his cracked lips in front of all his men. "Get up, cowboy," she whispered with firm sweetness. "We have 3 days to save our home. I'm not going to let that viper win. Are you with me?" Julian felt a surge of energy. He grabbed her hand and kissed it, staining it with his own blood and ash. "Until death, woman. With you, until death." The war had begun, but for the first time, Julian was not fighting alone. And that night, in the makeshift infirmary, while she tenderly healed his wounds, Julian knew he was irredeemably lost. He was falling in love with his own wife, and that terrified him more than any foreclosure. Could he win her back after all the damage he had done, or was she just fulfilling her duty while her heart secretly belonged to the vet? Doubt consumed him, but the softness of Mariana's hands on his skin promised a hope he would cling to with tooth and nail. What Julian didn't know was that Claudia wasn't playing fair, and the fire had only been the first warning. Early morning fell over Oak Ridge Ranch, enveloping everything in a heavy silence, broken only by the crackling of burnt wood that the wind carried from the destroyed barn. In the master bedroom, the atmosphere was very different, charged with a thick and vibrant intimacy that made the air feel heavy. Julian was sitting on the edge of the bed, bare-chested and full of makeshift bandages, while Mariana, with a bowl of warm water and clean cloths, cleaned with infinite patience the soot that still remained on his skin. The touch of her soft hands on his tense and aching muscles was a delicious torture for Julian. Every touch sent electric currents directly to his groin, making him forget the pain of the burns to replace it with a much older and more urgent pain: desire. He watched her in silence, scanning her concentrated face, her long lashes casting shadows over her cheeks, the movement of her pink lips every time she blew gently on a wound before applying the ointment. "Why do you do it?" Julian broke the silence, his husky voice vibrating in the dimly lit room. "After how I've treated you, the humiliations, having shouted at you in front of that vet, you should have let me burn in there. You should have fled with the notes and let Claudia keep everything." Mariana stopped her hand on his chest, right over his heart that was beating strongly. She looked up, and her honey eyes locked into his black ones with an intensity that took his breath away. "Because I am your wife, Julian, and although you behave like a wounded beast most of the time, I saw something in your eyes when you saved the horses. I saw that you have a soul, even if you insist on hiding it under layers of stupid pride. Besides," she moved closer, invading his personal space, making his legs open by instinct to let her be between them. "Because I like what I feel when you touch me. Even if I get angry, even if I hate you sometimes, my body doesn't know how to hate you, and that makes me even angrier." Julian let out a low growl and caught her hand against his chest. "You're a danger, Mariana. You have a very sincere mouth and a body that incites sin," he murmured, bringing his face close to hers. "You drive me crazy. You know that? My blood boils seeing you so close and not being able to take you as I want because I'm a mess." Mariana smiled with that mix of innocence and mischief that disarmed him. She slid her free hand down his abdomen, moving dangerously toward the edge of his pants. "Who says you can't? You're not crippled, Julian, and pain sometimes makes pleasure feel more intense." Her words were like gasoline. Julian forgot the burns, forgot the bankruptcy, forgot Claudia. He grabbed her by the nape and kissed her hungrily, a deep, wet kiss, tasting of possession and redemption. She climbed astride his legs, careful not to hurt him, but with enough pressure for him to feel the dampness of her intimacy through the thin fabric of her robe. "God, Mariana," he moaned into her mouth. "If you keep moving like that, I'm going to forget I'm a gentleman, and I'll rip your robe right here." "You were never a gentleman with me," she whispered, biting his lower lip. "You were a jerk, so don't start now. I want the man who tore down the stable door. I want my husband." It was a different lovemaking session than the previous night. Slower because of the wounds, but much more intense emotionally. They looked at each other the whole time, whispering things in each other's ears that turned Mariana's cheeks red and made Julian growl with pleasure. "You're mine, only mine. Tell your body to forget any other name," he ordered her, while caressing her with adoration and lust. "Only yours, Julian. It's always been yours," she responded, giving herself completely. When they finished, exhausted and interlaced, reality hit them again. But this time it found them united. Julian stroked her hair, thoughtful. "Tomorrow we will review those papers. My father was a hard man, but he wasn't a fool. He would never have signed something that put the ranch at risk without a backup. Claudia is lying, or there is something we aren't seeing. And I swear by the memory of my ancestors that I am not going to leave you in the street, Mariana." "I don't care about the street if I'm with you," she said bravely. "But we won't give that witch the satisfaction. Now rest, cowboy. Tomorrow we have a war to win." The next morning, the sun entered mercilessly, revealing the chaos of Julian's desk. They had been for hours reviewing old filing cabinets, boxes full of dust, and accounting from 20 years ago. Mariana, with reading glasses that made her look irresistibly intellectual in Julian's eyes, turned page after page with speed. "Here!" she suddenly exclaimed, making Julian jump. "What? What did you find?" "Look at this, Julian. It's a clause in the original loan contract with the bank. It says here, 'In case of death of the holder, the debt is secured by mortgage life insurance type A, provided it hasn't been refinanced in the last 5 years. Julian frowned, leaning in to read. The scent of her floral perfume filled his senses. He had to restrain himself from kissing her neck. "And my father died 2 years ago, but Claudia says he refinanced the debt with her father before he died." "But there is no refinancing signature here, Julian. Look at the dates. The supposed refinancing is dated August 15th. Your father was in the hospital in a coma since August 10th. It's impossible for him to have signed that. It's a forgery. It's fraud." Julian punched the table with his fist. A fierce smile drew across his face. "That damn viper. They forged the signature to keep Oak Ridge. I knew my father wouldn't betray me like that. Mariana, you're a genius. You just saved our heritage." He grabbed her by the waist and lifted her into the air, spinning with her while they laughed. He lowered her, sliding her body against his until they were mouth to mouth. "You're costing me dearly, woman," he said, shining with emotion. "Now I owe you my life and the ranch. How am I going to pay you?" "You could start by making me breakfast. I'm hungry," she joked. But Julian turned serious. His eyes scanned his wife's face with a new tenderness. "I will pay you by loving you every day of my life until I die, Mariana. I think I'm falling in love with you like a fool." Mariana's heart skipped a beat. She was breathless. But before she could respond to that confession she so craved, the sound of the phone interrupted them. Julian answered, annoyed. "Hello?" His expression changed from euphoria to worry in a second. "Yes, I understand. We're heading there right now." He hung up the phone slowly. It was the family lawyer in the city. He says Claudia and her lawyer have already presented the foreclosure order in court. The judge is about to sign it. We have to get to the city with these original papers before 12 noon, or we'll lose everything. Even if it's a fraud. If the judge signs, they'll kick us out, and it'll take years in court to prove it. Mariana looked at the clock. It was 8 in the morning. The city was 3 hours away by truck. "Let's go," she said, grabbing the folder with the documents. "There's no time to waste." They left the ranch in Julian's 4x4 truck. He drove skillfully through the dirt roads, kicking up dust. Mariana was in the passenger seat, clinging to the glove box, with the folder of documents hugged against her chest as if it were a child. The atmosphere was tense, but decided. They were a team. However, as soon as they turned onto the main highway, Julian noticed something in the rearview mirror. "Don't look back," he said with a tense voice, "but I think we're being followed." Mariana looked through the side mirror. A black truck with tinted windows was about 50 yards behind them, maintaining speed. "It's Claudia's men," she stated with fear. "That driver from yesterday had the face of a killer." "Do they know we have the proof?" "I don't know, but they aren't taking chances. Hold on tight, Mariana. This is going to get ugly." Julian stepped on the gas and the engine roared. The black truck did the same, closing the distance. A high-speed chase began through the winding mountain roads. Mariana screamed every time Julian took a sharp turn on the edge of a precipice, the tires screeching against the asphalt. "Julian, watch out!" she shouted when the black truck rammed them from behind. The impact shook the vehicle violently. "Sons of bitches!" Julian roared, fighting the steering wheel to keep control. "They want to run us off the road. They're crazy. They're going to kill us. They want to scare us or stop us, but they don't know who they're dealing with. Pass me the gun in the glove box." Mariana opened the glove box with trembling hands and pulled out the heavy revolver. "What are you going to do?" "Shoot the tires if they get closer. No one touches my woman or my land." At that moment, on a straight stretch, the black truck pulled up beside them. The passenger window went down, and the man with the briefcase, now with a psychopath's face, aimed a gun at them. Mariana ducked instinctively. "Julian, they have a gun! Down!" A shot rang out, and Julian's side mirror exploded into 1,000 pieces. "Damn it!" Julian braked suddenly, causing the black truck to overshoot them from inertia. Then he turned sharply onto a secondary dirt road, a shortcut only locals knew, heading into the dense forest. The black truck tried to brake and turn around, but Julian had already gained an advantage. They drove deep into the woods, jumping over potholes and stones. "We lost them. For now," Julian gasped, stopping the vehicle under the shade of some leafy trees so they couldn't be seen from the road. "Are you okay, my love? Did they do anything to you?" He leaned over her, checking her with desperate hands, touching her face, her arms, looking for blood. "I'm fine, Julian, I'm fine," she said, trying to calm her racing breath. "But the radiator is smoking." Indeed, a white cloud was coming from the hood. A stray bullet, or the impact, had damaged the engine. They were stranded in the middle of nowhere, miles from the city, with hitmen looking for them. "Damn it!" Julian hit the steering wheel. "We're on foot." "It doesn't matter," Mariana said, opening the door. "We'll walk. We'll run if necessary. I know these hills. I used to come here with my father to collect wood. If we cross the hill on foot, we'll reach the old highway where the town bus passes at 10. We can get to the city in time." Julian looked at her with admiration. That woman never ceased to surprise him. "Fine, you lead. I'll cover your back." They got out of the truck, Julian with the gun in hand and the folder hidden under his shirt, Mariana leading the way through the undergrowth. They walked for an hour under the suffocating heat, holding hands when the terrain got difficult. Julian never stopped keeping watch. Every time she stumbled, he held her with a strength that gave her security. At one point, they had to cross a stream, jumping between slippery stones. Mariana slipped and fell into the water, soaking her dress. "Mariana!" Julian jumped into the water regardless of his boots and pulled her out in his arms, carrying her to the dry bank. "Did you get hurt?" "Only my pride and the dress," she laughed nervously, shivering from the cold water. The wet dress clung to her body like a second skin, revealing every curve. Her nipples, hardened by the cold, were clearly marked. Julian swallowed, his eyes darkening with desire despite the danger. "I should be thinking about how to survive, but I see you like this, wet, wild, with your hair messy, and I can only think about ripping that dress off you with my teeth." Mariana felt the heat rise to her cheeks and her belly. "Not the time, cowboy. We have a mission. But if we get out of this, I promise I'll let you do it." "That's a promise, and I collect my debts," he growled, giving her a quick and hungry kiss before helping her up. "Let's go. We're close." Finally, they reached the old highway, just as the ramshackle old bus appeared around the bend. They signaled it and got on, sitting in the back, huddled together, blending in with the peasants carrying chickens and sacks of potatoes. No one would suspect that this couple, dirty, wet, and exhausted, were the owners of the largest ranch in the region, fighting for their lives. Julian put his arm around Mariana's shoulders, pulling her toward him. She rested her head on his chest, and he kissed the crown of her head. "Forgive me," he whispered softly. "Why?" she asked sleepily. "For everything. For not seeing how valuable you are from day one. For making you cry. For the absurd jealousy with the vet. Though I still can't stand him. I can't help feeling he saw your light before I did, and that kills me with envy." Mariana looked up and touched his cheek. "Robert was a friend when I felt alone, but he never made me feel the fire you make me feel, Julian. You are my husband, the difficult and complicated man I fell in love with. I don't want an easy man. I want you, with your jealousy and your bad temper, as long as you love me for real." "I love you, Mariana." The confession came from his lips as natural as breathing, surprising even himself. "I love you more than the ranch, more than my pride. If we lose everything today, but I have you, I've already won." Mariana felt tears in her eyes, this time of pure happiness. They kissed in the back seat of the bus, a sweet kiss full of promises, ignoring the curious looks of the other passengers. For the first time, it was just Julian and Mariana, without titles, without lands in between. Just a man and a woman in love. They arrived in the city just in time. It was 11:30. They ran through the crowded streets until they reached the imposing courthouse building. They entered gasping, dirty, attracting all the gazes of the suit-and-tied lawyers. They reached the courtroom just as the judge was raising the gavel. "Stop!" Julian shouted, throwing the doors wide open. "Stop that order!" Claudia, who was sitting in the front row with a triumphant smile, turned around, and her face went pale upon seeing them. "What is this rabble doing here?" Claudia shrieked. "Security, get them out!" "I am Julian Oakton, and this is my wife," he said, walking with a firm step toward the bench, ignoring the guards. "Your Honor, before you sign that injustice, I suggest you look at this. It is proof of a massive fraud committed by this woman and her family against my deceased father." Julian tossed the folder onto the judge's bench. The silence in the room was deathly. The judge, an elderly and severe man, adjusted his glasses and opened the folder, reading in silence for several interminable minutes. Claudia tried to get up. "They are lies! Those are fake papers! Julian is desperate!" "Sit down," the judge ordered, banging the gavel. "Miss Claudia, I see an attached forensic analysis here, and dates that don't match. It appears Mr. Oakton Sr. signed documents while in a coma. This is very serious. Bailiff, stay the foreclosure immediately and call the district attorney's office. I want this investigated for attempted fraud and forgery of public documents." "No! You don't know who my father is!" Claudia shouted, losing her temper, while her lawyer tried to silence her. Julian looked at Mariana and smiled. She returned the smile. They hugged tightly in the middle of the room as chaos broke out around Claudia. "We did it," Mariana whispered. "We did it, my love." Leaving the courthouse, the air seemed cleaner. The sun shone brighter. Julian felt light. Free. They stopped on the steps. "Now," Julian said, "let's go home. We have a celebration pending, a promise to keep in the bathroom, inwed, and wherever we feel like it." "That seems like an excellent idea," she said, biting her lip mischievously. "But first, I'm really hungry. Will you buy me some tacos?" Julian let out a loud and genuine laugh, hugging her by the waist. "All the tacos you want, my queen. And then, I'm going to eat you." It seemed like the perfect happy ending. They walked arm in arm toward the square. But life, capricious as always, was not done with them. While they were eating happily at a street stall, laughing and staining themselves with sauce, Julian saw something across the street that chilled his blood. Robert, the vet, was coming out of a pharmacy with a woman carrying a baby in her arms. Julian narrowed his eyes, not out of jealousy this time, but out of confusion. The woman turned, and Julian recognized her. She was a former ranch employee who had left a year ago without saying goodbye. And the baby had a birthmark on its forehead, identical to the one Julian's father had. A shiver ran down the rancher's back. "What's wrong?" Mariana asked, noticing his rigidity. "Nothing. I thought I saw someone," he lied, not wanting to ruin the moment. But the seed of a new doubt had been planted. If that child was what he thought, things at Oak Ridge Ranch were going to get much more complicated. Moreover, he didn't realize that from a dark car parked on the corner, Claudia was watching them with tears of black hatred running through her perfect makeup, dialing a number on her cell phone. "Hello?" Claudia said, with a voice trembling with rage. "Yes, they failed. They're alive, and they have the ranch. I want Plan B. I don't care how much it costs. I want them to suffer. I want her to lose what she loves most. And if for that, I have to destroy Julian too, so be it." Mariana and Julian returned to the ranch that afternoon, feeling victorious. They loved each other with desperation and tenderness all night, celebrating their triumph and their newly discovered love, unaware that the true trial by fire was about to arrive, and that this time the danger would not come from outside, but from a family secret that could destroy the foundations of their marriage forever. At dawn, Mariana woke up with violent nausea, running to the bathroom. Julian held her while she vomited, worried. "Are you okay? Was it the tacos?" Mariana washed her mouth and looked at him in the mirror, pale, but with a strange glow in her eyes. "I don't think it was the tacos, Julian. I'm 2 weeks late. With all the stress, I had forgotten." Julian stood paralyzed, processing the information. "A delay? You mean, I think you're going to be a dad, cowboy." The news fell like a bomb of happiness and fear in Julian's heart. A child. His legacy. But in his mind, the image of the baby he saw with Robert and the former employee tormented him. What if that other child claimed his inheritance? What if fate was playing a cruel joke on him? He hugged Mariana tightly, swearing to protect her and his child from any evil. But the shadow of Claudia and the past lurked closer than they imagined. The news of the pregnancy fell on Oak Ridge Ranch like blessed rain after years of drought, transforming not only the atmosphere of the house, but also Julian's hardened heart. During the following months, the ogre that the whole town feared became Mariana's most fierce and obsessive guardian. He didn't allow her to lift even a spoon if he considered it heavy. He filled the house with down cushions. He hired 2 extra cooks just to satisfy her early morning cravings. And at night, he worshipped his wife's changing body with a devotion that bordered on the religious and the primitive. One night, while the full moon illuminated the room, Julian was kneeling on the bed between Mariana's legs, rubbing almond oil on her belly, which was already beginning to bulge slightly at 4 months of gestation. "Julian, you're exaggerating. You're going to leave me slippery as a fish," Mariana laughed, running her fingers through his thick black hair. He looked up. His eyes shone with that mixture of love and dark desire that always gave her butterflies in her stomach. "It's never enough, woman. This boy or girl is going to be a warrior. They carry my blood and yours, but they need to know from now who's in charge out there. Besides, I like touching you. I like seeing how your breasts have grown for me, how your hips are widening. It drives me crazy, Mariana. You're the sexiest woman in the world, carrying my child." "You're a pervert, Mr. Oakton," she whispered, blushing, but opening her legs a bit more, inviting him. "You're supposed to be talking to the baby, not saying dirty things." "I can do both." Julian lowered his head and kissed her belly. "Hello, champ or princess. I'm your dad. You better behave in there and not tire your mother, because she is my queen, and if something hurts her, it hurts me. And get ready, because you're going to inherit this whole empire." Then he looked at Mariana with a wolfish smile. "And now that I've greeted the heir, I'm going to greet the owner of the land." He slid upward, covering her body with his without supporting his weight, kissing her with a slow passion, savoring every moan. They made love carefully, but with a scorching intensity. Julian whispered dirty things in her ear, telling her exactly what he would do to her when the doctor gave him permission to be rougher, promising her eternal nights of pleasure to compensate for every tear he made her shed in the past. Mariana clung to his shoulders, feeling like the most loved and desired woman on earth, forgetting for a moment the shadows that lurked outside their bubble of happiness. But happiness at Oak Ridge had enemies. The image of that baby in the arms of the former employee and the presence of Robert wouldn't let Julian sleep completely. One morning, while Mariana slept peacefully, Julian left early, decided to face that ghost. He rode to Robert's veterinary clinic, entering without knocking, finding the vet checking a German shepherd. Robert looked up, calm. "Julian, it surprises me to see you here if you don't have a sick horse. What's up? Is Mariana okay?" "My wife is perfect, expecting my child," Julian said, marking territory. "But I didn't come to talk about her. I came to talk about Letitia, the employee who left. I saw her with you, Robert. I saw her with a child who has the Oakton mark on his forehead." The silence in the clinic was heavy. Robert set down the stethoscope and sighed. "I knew you'd come sooner or later. You have a hawk's eye for what suits you, Julian. Speak. Is he your child? Because if you're playing happy family with my scraps, shut up." Robert hit the metal table. "Don't speak about her like that. Letitia was a victim of your father, Julian. The child isn't mine. The child is your brother." Julian felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. He stepped back, pale. "What are you saying? My father was a man of honor." "Your father was a man, with virtues and defects. He had an affair with Letitia before he died. She got pregnant and left for fear of your mother, Mrs. Bernarda, who threatened to take the baby from her if she spoke. Letitia lived in misery until I found her a few months ago, malnourished and sick. I've been helping her, Julian. The boy's name is Matthew, and yes, He is an Oakton." Julian ran his hand over his face. The world was spinning. He had a brother, a little brother living in poverty while he swam in the abundance of the ranch he had just saved. The family honor clashed with his own moral reborn, thanks to Mariana's love. "Where are they?" he asked with a husky voice. "In a boarding house in town. They have nowhere to go." "Pick them up. Bring them to the ranch today." "Are you crazy? Your mother? Mariana?" "My mother doesn't rule at Oak Ridge. I do. And Mariana has a heart larger than this town. I'm not going to let a brother of mine go hungry. Bring them, Robert. And thanks for being a better man than me." Robert nodded with a slight smile. "Maybe Mariana was right about you after all, Julian. There is a heart beating under that rock." The arrival of Letitia and little Matthew at the ranch was an emotional earthquake. Mrs. Bernarda, who was visiting, cried out to heaven, calling everyone sinners and threatening to disinherit Julian, an empty threat, as she no longer had power. But Mariana, far from being angry, hugged the crying girl and took the baby in her arms. Little Matthew grabbed Julian's finger, and he felt an instant connection. "They will stay in the guest house," Julian decreed, "and Matthew will be recognized. He is an Oakton." Mariana looked at her husband with pride, loving him even more if possible. "You did the right thing, my love," she whispered to him that night. "You are a great man." Julian hugged her against his chest, hiding his face in her neck. "I do it for you. You make me want to be good. I don't want our child to have a father to be ashamed of." However, in the shadows, the viper was ready to strike. Claudia had not stayed still. Upon learning of the arrival of the bastard and Mariana's pregnancy, her hatred turned to madness. She allied herself with the only weak link at the ranch, Ernest, an ambitious and resentful young hand who felt Julian treated him poorly. Claudia paid him a fortune to execute Plan B. One hot afternoon, Julian had to travel to the city to close the sale of the harvest, leaving Mariana in the care of Ansel and the house staff. "I'll be back tomorrow at noon," Julian promised, kissing her for a long time in front of the door. "Don't leave the house, please. I have a bad feeling." "Don't be paranoiac, cowboy. I'll be fine. You take care." Julian left with a heavy heart, looking in the rearview mirror until his wife's silhouette disappeared. He didn't know he was falling into a perfect trap. As soon as night fell, the ranch grew silent. Mariana was in her room knitting a yellow blanket for the baby when she heard a strange noise in the hallway. "Rosie?" she called to the maid. No one answered. Suddenly, the power was cut. Total darkness. Mariana felt a cold fear run down her back. She stood up with difficulty, protecting her belly with her hands. "Who's there?" The door burst open and a flashlight hit her face, blinding her. "Good evening, ma'am," said a male voice that sounded vaguely familiar. It was Ernest, the traitorous hand. "Ernest, what are you doing here? Leave immediately or I'll call Ansel." "Ansel is sleeping a very long nap in the barn, ma'am. No one is going to hear you. Miss Claudia sends her regards." Before Mariana could scream, 2 more men entered and grabbed her. One put a cloth with chloroform over her mouth. Mariana fought with a mother's fury, kicking and scratching, thinking only of her baby. "No, my child," she tried to scream, but the darkness swallowed her. Julian was halfway there when his cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Yes, hello, dear Julian." Claudia's syrupy and poisonous voice chilled him. "I hope you aren't too far away, because your love nest has become empty." "Claudia, what the hell did you do?" Julian braked the truck so hard it almost flipped. "Let's just say Mariana got bored of you. Didn't you see the photos I left in your office? She never stopped seeing the vet. They've gone together, Julian, and they took your father's bastard too. They've left you alone, as you deserve." "You lie," he roared, Mariana would never do that. Are you sure? Go back and look at the note she left. Love is blind, darling, but reality always opens your eyes. Oh, and if you try to look for her with the police, let's just say the stress might be bad for the baby. You decide. The call cut off. Julian turned the truck around with a suicidal skid and drove back to the ranch at 110 miles per hour, shouting Mariana's name, hitting the steering wheel until his knuckles bled. When he arrived at the ranch, it looked like a ghost town. He ran to the bedroom. It was empty. Mariana's clothes were gone. There was a suitcase missing. On the bed, a letter written in her handwriting, or a perfect forgery. Julian, forgive me. I can't keep pretending. The child isn't yours. It's Robert's. I always loved him. Thanks for saving the ranch, but I can't live a lie. Don't look for me. Julian read the letter and felt as if his heart split into two bleeding pieces. The pain was so sharp, he fell to his knees, letting out a gut-wrenching howl that startled the dogs. Doubt, that old enemy, tried to enter. What if it was true? What if it was all an act? But then he saw something. On the floor, half hidden under the bed, something gold gleamed. He picked it up. It was the medal of the Virgin of Guadalupe that Mariana never took off, the one her grandmother gave her. The clasp was broken, as if it had been ripped off with violence, and nearby, on the rug, a small spot of fresh blood. Julian squeezed the medal in his fist. His eyes dried instantly. The pain disappeared and was replaced by a cold and calculating murderous fury, much worse than that of his jealousy. You didn't leave. They took you, he whispered to the empty room, and whoever laid a hand on you is going to wish they were never born. He went downstairs carrying his hunting rifle and an automatic pistol in his belt. Ansel was coming in, rubbing his head, bleeding. Boss, they hit me. They took her in a black truck. They were heading toward the old ridge. Gather the men, Ansel, Julian ordered, with a voice that seemed to come from beyond the grave. All of them. Tell them to bring weapons, horses, dogs. I want them to hunt that truck like they're wolves. No one touches my woman and lives to tell about it. But boss, it's the ridge. It's dangerous at night. I don't give a damn about the danger. Claudia has unleashed the devil, and now the devil is coming for her. Meanwhile, in an abandoned and dirty cabin deep in the mountains, Mariana was waking up tied to an old chair. Her head ached and she was nauseous. In front of her, Claudia was smoking a long cigarette, looking at her with contempt. The Sleeping Beauty woke up, Claudia said, blowing smoke in her face. Look at that! The lady of the great ranch, reduced to this. Why are you doing this, Claudia? Mariana asked, trying not to show fear. Julian is going to find you. Julian thinks you left him for another. His male pride is wounded. He's not going to look for you, dear. And by the time he realizes the truth, you won't be here anymore. I'm going to make you lose that baby, Mariana. A regrettable accident, a fall down the stairs, perhaps. And then Julian will come back to me, seeking comfort. Mariana felt the purest terror for her child. If you touch my child, I'll kill you, Mariana shouted, struggling. Oh, how scary, Claudia mocked. Ernest, make sure she's comfortable, or uncomfortable. Ernest approached with a lewd smile, touching Mariana's shoulder. It's a pity to waste so much beauty, boss. Can I have some fun for a while before? Mariana spat in Ernest's face. He raised his hand to slap her. Dare you! Mariana challenged him, eyes flashing sparks. Hit me, coward, but pray that Julian doesn't find you, because if I tell him what you did to me, he'll rip your skin off in strips. Ernest hesitated, lowering his hand. The name Julian Oakton inspired terror in the area. Leave her, Claudia ordered, bored. I don't want visible marks yet. Take her to the basement. Let her rot there with the rats until tomorrow." Mariana was dragged to a damp and dark basement, thrown onto an old mattress. She cried in silence, stroking her belly. "Hold on, my love. Hold on, little one. Daddy's coming. I know it. I can feel it." And she was not wrong. Miles away, the mountain night was illuminated by the torches and headlights of 20 trucks. Julian Oakton rode at the front, not in a truck, but on his black horse, Satan, cutting across trails that vehicles couldn't cross. His face was a mask of death. Robert was at his side, also armed. "Are you sure it's this way?" Robert asked. The tracker found fresh tire tracks. "They're going to the old silver mine. It's property of Claudia's family. Julian, if we go in shooting, they might hurt her." "We aren't going in shooting, Robert. We're going in slitting throats. I want total silence until I give the order. Claudia thinks she's playing chess, but I'm playing war." They reached the cabin at dawn. Julian dismounted and moved like a shadow through the trees, knife in hand. He saw 2 guards smoking outside. He approached the first from behind and knocked him out with the butt of the rifle before he could even sigh. Robert took care of the second. They surrounded the house. Julian looked through a dirty window and saw Claudia sleeping on a sofa with an empty wine bottle beside her. But he didn't see Mariana. He signaled his men. Ansel kicked down the front door. Chaos broke out. Claudia woke up screaming. Ernest tried to pull his pistol, but Julian was faster and shot him in the leg. Ernest fell howling in pain. Julian walked in slowly, stepping over Ernest, and grabbed Claudia by the throat, lifting her off the sofa. "Where's my wife?" he asked, with a voice so calm it was terrifying. She left, I swear," Claudia stammered, terrified upon seeing the demon in his eyes. "You lie!" Julian squeezed harder. Claudia turned purple. "In the basement! She's in the basement!" Ernest shrieked from the floor, fearing for his life. "Don't kill her!" Julian dropped Claudia like she was trash, letting her fall to the floor where Ansel handcuffed her. He ran to the basement door, blew the padlock off with a shot, and went down the rotting wooden stairs. "Mariana?" In the gloom, Mariana looked up. She was trembling with cold, dirty, but alive. "Julian!" He threw himself on the floor beside her, desperately cutting the ropes on her hands and feet. "My love, forgive me. I'm late. Forgive me." Mariana clung to his neck, crying hysterically now that she felt safe. "I knew you'd come. I knew you wouldn't believe that letter." Julian carried her in his arms, as if she were made of glass, and went up the stairs. Coming out into the light of the main room, all his men cheered. But Claudia, who had managed to pull a small pistol from her bag while Ansel was distracted, aimed at Julian's back from the floor. "If he's not mine, he's no one's." She screamed, mad with hatred. "Julian, watch out!" Robert shouted. A deafening shot rang out. Mariana screamed. Julian staggered forward but did not let go of Mariana. Robert had fired at the same time as Claudia. Robert's bullet hit Claudia's shoulder, disarming her. But Claudia's bullet... Julian looked at Mariana with bulging eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked. Yes, but you..." Mariana looked at Julian's shirt. A red stain was beginning to spread rapidly on his right side, just below the ribs. "It's nothing," he said, smiling, but blood stained his teeth. His legs failed, and he fell to his knees, still holding Mariana so she wouldn't hit the ground. "Julian, no, no, no!" Mariana knelt beside him, pressing the wound with her hands. "Robert, help them! He's dying!" Julian was turning pale rapidly. He caressed Mariana's face with his blood-stained hand. "Take care of our child. I love you, my witch," he whispered, and his eyes closed, his head falling heavily onto her lap. Mariana's cry of pain resonated throughout the mountain, louder than any shot. "Julian! Don't leave me! Julian!" The image froze with Mariana crying over her husband's inert body, while Robert desperately tried to stop the bleeding, and Claudia laughed like a madwoman as she was dragged to the police patrol car that had just arrived. Had love won, or had death collected its final price? The fate of Oak Ridge Ranch hung by a thread, as thin as Julian's last breath. The sound of ambulance sirens ripped through the tranquility of the mountain night, a constant howl that drilled into Mariana's ears. She was in the back, kneeling on the metal floor, hands tightly pressing the wound in Julian's side, desperately trying to contain the river of red life escaping through her fingers. Julian lay pale, skin the color of wax and cold sweat beating on his forehead. His black eyes, usually full of fire and dominance, were now half closed, glassy, fighting against the darkness threatening to swallow him. "Don't fall asleep, Julian. Look at me," Mariana shouted, tears mixing with the blood on her own face. "You promised me a whole life. You promised me tacos, and you promised to love me. Don't you dare break your promise now, you coward cowboy." Julian moved his lips, trying to smile, but only a grimace of pain came out. He raised a trembling hand, heavy as lead, and sought her belly. "Take care of them," he whispered with a gurgling voice. "If I go, you are the owner. Tell them all that you are the queen of Oak Ridge." "You aren't going anywhere," she sobbed, kissing his bloody hand and putting it over her heart. "Robert, go faster. We're losing him." Robert, driving the truck behind the police-escorted Al-Ghourid ambulance, was talking on the phone with the hospital so they would prepare the operating room. The ambulance lurched around a curve, and Julian moaned. His head fell to one side, and the hand touching Mariana slid inertly to the floor. The heart monitor began to beep with a continuous, sharp sound that chilled Mariana's blood. "We're losing him!" "Charge!" the paramedic shouted, pushing Mariana aside. "Julian! No! Julian!" Mariana screamed his name with such force it tore her throat, feeling her soul break. The following hours were a blur of white lights, antiseptic smell, and stale coffee in the waiting room. Mariana, still in the torn dress stained with her husband's blood, refused to move from the operating room door. Ansel, Robert, and Letitia, with little Matthew, were there, in silence, praying. That was when Mrs. Bernarda arrived. Julian's mother walked quickly down the hall, but seeing Mariana covered in someone else's blood, she stopped dead. Everyone expected screams, expected her to blame her. Bernarda looked at the operating room door and then at Mariana. She saw the genuine terror in her daughter-in-law's eyes, saw her hands interlaced in prayer, trembling uncontrollably. Bernarda approached slowly. Mariana stood up, preparing for an attack. "Mrs. Bernarda, Mariana began to say with a broken voice. But Bernarda did not shout. For the first time in her life, the proud matriarch broke. Her eyes filled with tears, and in a gesture that surprised everyone, she hugged Mariana. "Save him. Your prayers are stronger than mine, daughter," the old woman whispered, crying. "I know you love him. I saw it in how you looked at him in court. If he lives, it is because of you. Forgive me for not seeing it before." Mariana, exhausted and surprised, let herself fall into her mother-in-law's arms, and both women cried together for the same man, who, in his own way, was the center of their universes. 6 eternal hours passed before the surgeon came out. He took off his mask with weariness. "Relatives of Julian Oakton. Here, I am his wife, Mariana jumped up. The doctor sighed, maintaining the suspense for one more second. He is a very strong man, ma'am. The bullet grazed the hepatic artery, and he lost a lot of blood. His heart stopped twice on the table, but he refused to die. He is in intensive care, critical, but stable. He has survived. Mariana felt her legs fail, and Robert had to hold her. He's alive, thank God. Julian spent 3 days in an induced coma. Mariana did not leave his side for a moment, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair, holding his hand, talking to him constantly. She told him stories of the future, described what the baby's room would be like, read him the news of the ranch. On the 4th day, while Mariana was cleaning his face with a damp cloth, she felt a squeeze on her hand. She stopped, holding her breath. Julian slowly opened his eyes. He was weak, full of tubes, but there was that black spark, that intensity that was uniquely his. "Water," he croaked with a raspy voice. Mariana gave him a drink through a straw, crying with silent happiness. "Hello, sleeping beauty," she smiled, caressing his cheek. "You gave us a deathly scare." Julian focused his gaze on her honey eyes, and then looked down at her belly. "The baby?" was his first clear question. "It's fine. We're fine. We are all here waiting for you." Julian sighed, closing his eyes with relief, and a lone tear rolled down his temple. "I thought I wouldn't see you again. In the dark, I heard your voice, Mariana. You called me cowboy, and I didn't want to leave you alone with the wolves. There are no more wolves, Julian. Claudia is in prison. Ernest, too. It's over. Now, it's just you and me." Julian made an effort to move his hand and placed it over her chest. "Kiss me. I need to know it's not a dream." Mariana leaned over the bed rails, careful not to touch his bandages, and joined her lips with his. It was a soft kiss, tasting of medicine and life, but loaded with an overwhelming intimacy. Julian, despite his weakness, deepened the kiss, his tongue seeking hers desperately, needing to feel her heat, her breath, the physical proof of her existence. "I love you, Mariana," he whispered against her lips. "You are my whole life." Recovery at Oak Ridge Ranch was slow but sweet. Julian, who had always been a man of action, hated being confined to a wheelchair while he healed, but Mariana made sure to make his convalescence as pleasant as possible. There was a fundamental change in their relationship. The barriers had completely fallen. Julian was no longer afraid to show his affection. He became clingy, seeking physical contact at every opportunity. One afternoon, a month after the accident, Mariana was helping Julian bathe. He was sitting in the large clawfoot tub with the water covering him to the waist so as not to wet the chest bandages. Mariana, kneeling beside him, soaped his strong arms with a soft sponge. "You are torturing me, woman," Julian murmured, watching how her neckline grew damp with the steam. "You have the hands of an angel, but the gaze of a demon who knows exactly what she provokes in me." "The doctor said no strong emotions yet," she laughed, running the sponge down his neck and over his broad back. "So stay still. To hell with the doctor. I'm fine now." Julian grabbed her hand and took it underwater, placing it on his masculinity, which evidently was not sick. "See? He says I'm more than ready." Mariana blushed, feeling the pulse under her palm, desire igniting in her own belly. "Julian, the wound is on your chest, not there. Come in with me, Mariana. Please, I need to feel you skin to skin. I'm going crazy watching you walk around the room taking care of me without being able to make you mine." Mariana couldn't resist. She slowly took off her dress under her husband's hungry gaze and entered the tub carefully, sitting astride his legs, resting her back on the opposite edge so as not to press on him. The warm water enveloped them. Julian let out a groan of pure satisfaction at feeling her soft buttocks and thighs against his skin. "God, this is better than any medicine," he said, burying his face in her neck, inhaling her scent, kissing and nibbling her damp skin. "I want you so much, my love. I'm never going to tire of you." They made love slowly, with the water splashing gently, looking into each other's eyes, with short but deep movements, communicating without words, healing the memories of that first horrible night with new memories of liquid love and tender passion. "You're going to give me another child if you keep this up," she joked afterward, leaning against his healthy shoulder. "I'm going to fill the house with children," he promised. "I want a soccer team. I want to see them running through the field knowing their mother is the bravest and most beautiful woman in the world." The months flew by. Mariana's belly grew huge and round. The ranch prospered like never before. Julian, now almost completely recovered, though with a scar Mariana kissed devotedly. Every night, ran the business with a fair hand. He recognized Matthew as his brother and treated him with affection, teaching him to ride, breaking his father's cycle of coldness. Robert remained the vet, and now a good friend of the family, welcome to dinner on Sundays. Julian's pathological jealousy had transformed into protective pride. He liked to show off his wife, grabbing her by the waist in front of everyone so they could see that this spectacular woman had chosen him, the imperfect man who almost died for her. But like every great story, the ending had to be dramatic. The day of the birth arrived in the middle of a fierce electrical storm, ironically similar to that of their wedding night, as if nature wanted to close a cycle. The pains began at 2 a.m, sharp and fast. The bridge connecting the ranch to the town had fallen due to the rising river. There was no way to get to the hospital. "He can't be born here!" Julian shouted, pale, more scared than when he was shot. "She needs a doctor!" "There's no more time, Julian!" Mariana shouted from the bed, clutching her belly. "It's coming now!" Leticia, who had helped with animal births and heard stories from her midwife grandmother, took control. "Bring hot water and clean towels. Boss, you hold her hand. Don't leave her alone." Julian sat behind Mariana on the bed, serving as a backrest, hugging her, allowing her to discharge all her pain and strength into him. "I can't. It hurts too much," Mariana cried, sweating. "Yes, you can, my life. Yes, you can. You are a warrior. You pulled a horse out of a fire. You pulled me out of the grave. This is nothing for you. I'm here. I've got you. Breathe with me." Julian whispered words of encouragement, dried her sweat, kissed her temple, suffering every contraction with her. "I see the head," Leticia shouted. "Push, ma'am. Push with soul and life. Come on, Mariana." Julian squeezed her hand. "For our son, push." With a cry that joined the roar of thunder outside, Mariana gave one last superhuman push. The strong and clear cry of a baby filled the room, silencing the storm instantly. "It's a boy," Leticia said, crying, lifting the small pink baby. "It's a beautiful and strong boy." Julian looked at that small creature, covered in fluids, wailing with powerful lungs. He felt his heart explode in his chest. He took him with trembling hands. When Leticia passed him wrapped in a towel, he looked at his son, and then looked at Mariana, who lay exhausted but radiant, looking at them with infinite love. Julian leaned over and placed the baby on her chest, and the three fused into a hug. "Thank you," Julian sobbed, kissing his wife's closed eyes. "Thank you for giving me this family. Thank you for teaching me to love." "He looks like you," Mariana whispered, touching the baby's nose. "He has your frown. Then he'll be stubborn, just like his father. But he'll have a mother who will teach him to have a good heart. His name will be Michael, like your father, Mariana, because I want him to have the name of a good man." Life continued at Oak Ridge. Mrs. Bernarda became the most indulgent grandmother in the world. Claudia was sentenced to 20 years in prison for attempted homicide and fraud, alone and forgotten in a cold cell. A year after Michael's birth, the ranch held a large party. It wasn't a wedding, nor a baptism. It was a renewal of vows. Under the great oak tree that gave the ranch its name, Julian and Mariana stood before the priest and the whole town. This time, there was no storm. The sky was bright blue. Mariana did not wear a dress forced upon her, but a simple white lace one that moved with the breeze, and in her arms she carried little Michael, who laughed while playing with his father's tie. Julian took his wife's hands and looked into her eyes, those honey eyes that had captivated and saved him. "Some time ago I promised you that you would sleep on the sofa and that I would never burn for you," Julian said, with a strong voice so all could hear, not ashamed of his past because it was what had brought them here. "I was a fool, blind with pride. Today, I promise you that my bed, my house, my life, and my soul are yours. I promise you that you will never feel alone again. I promise to care for you, respect you, and kiss you every morning as if it were the last. I love you, Mariana." Mariana smiled, with tears of happiness shining in the sun. "And I promise you, Julian, that I will continue to be your anchor to the ground, your companion, and your lover. I love you with all my heart, grumpy cowboy." They kissed, and the applause of the people mixed with the neighing of the horses in the distance and the laughter of their son. As the sun set, tinting the sky orange and violet, Julian hugged Mariana and his son, looking at their lands, knowing that true wealth was not in the acres, but in the arms that surrounded him. He left her for an obsession, for a blind pride, believing that a son and status were the only legacy that mattered. But when he saw her reborn, happy and loved, regret and jealousy taught him the hardest lesson of his life. The story of Julian and Mariana is a powerful reminder that the true value of a family does not reside in traditions or last names, but in unconditional love and mutual respect. Sometimes, second chances are not to recover what we lost, but to become, through pain and regret, the person we always should have been. And if you liked this story of love and redemption, give it a giant like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next novels that will touch your heart.